All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tim Siglin. I'm co-founder of a company called Transitions Incorporated in the U.S. I'm also a contributing editor for both Streaming Media Magazine in the States as well as here. I'm just going to put a slight pitch in for my very last session at the end of the day. We're talking technical throughout the day, but the session I'm going to do at the very end of the day is on business and looking to expand your business from Europe into the U.S. because my other life outside of technology is actually working with tech startups who come into the States. So this panel we've done several times over the last few years at Streaming Media Europe, and it's always a very popular panel because those of us who work in streaming typically have to work with a streaming server of some sort, whether it's going through a CDN who has the streaming server or whether it's setting up within our own enterprise. And today we have 5 panelists, and each of these panelists represents a different media server technology. So I'm actually going to just very quickly have each of them introduce themselves, and then we'll go through a series of questions. So Arjen, we'll start with you.
Hi there, I'm Arjen Wagenaar. I'm the CTO of CodeShop. We have a product that's called Unified Streaming. It basically is an extension to existing web servers, and it creates it gives you the opportunity to create a complete full media server from an existing web server.
Very good.
My name is Xavier Pouya. I'm from Microsoft. I'm part of the Azure Media Services product team. So we are developing on-site server, which is called RIS Media Server. And we have also our cloud-based platform, which is called Windows Azure Media Services. We released last January.
Hello, I'm Steve Allison. I'm from Adobe. I am the technical lead for our video solutions technologies. So anything to do with DRM or video streaming or players or anything like that is my bag over here.
I'm David Smith. I'm from RealNetworks, the partner director for Real here in EMEA. We make the Helix Media Delivery platform, which is essentially 2 parts, encoding and server technology and software. And new to the market is that we've combined all that technology into an appliance. We now offer 6 appliances that enables you to simply plug in video in the back and deliver multi-screen video out the front, all through a web interface, making it nice and easy for anyone in production.
Chris?
I'm Chris Knowlton with Wowza Media Systems, and we have a product called Wowza Media Server and a coding product for iOS called GoCoder.
Very good. And just for the audience, I'm curious in terms of the different tools that we have represented up here, how many in the audience are using Wowza Media Server? Okay. How many are using Helix, which is the real product? All right, very good. Adobe Media Server or Flash Media Server? Okay, very good. Microsoft's IIS, I guess, or in IIS or Azure? IIS, okay, very good. And then CodeShop with unified streaming. Ah, very good. So several of you actually are using multiple servers. That's very interesting to know. So the first question for the panel, and I'll start with Chris and we'll work our way around, is between the last time that we did this, which was in October here, and now, what's changed with your media server software or services?
We made a number of changes in a recent release about a week back, our 3.6 release. We added additional closed captioning support so that if you're doing live or on-demand streaming and have closed captioning either embedded in the stream or as a sidecar file, we can probably take that and repackage it to additional formats to deliver it now. We also added support for NVIDIA's I don't know if there's a good way to say it. I always want to say NVENC, but NVENC capability, which is sort of like the next generation past CUDA. At least that's how I think of it. So we support that on both Windows and Linux, 64-bit operating systems. So now on some systems you'll get up to 4 times better performance than you could with CUDA previously. And so that's kind of an interesting thing for us. We also added Dolby Digital and Dolby Digital Plus delivery to using smooth streaming in HLS. So if you have a Roku or an Xbox or something that can take a Dolby Digital stream, we'll pass the stream through to it now that you can actually get surround sound out of that home theater.
And you mentioned GoCoder as well.
GoCoder, exactly right. Yeah, so we released an iOS, an iPhone app, GoCoder 1.0, and then so basically for $4.99 US, you can have, you take your iPhone that's in your pocket and turn it into a camera and a coder that will push content directly to Wowza Media Server. And the last thing is in our 3.6 was a Dash preview. So if you're interested in trying out in-pig Dash capabilities, we have most of the Dash capabilities enabled with the preview.
And for Dash, are you doing specifically around the Dash 264 portion or the
Yeah,
HLS as well?
That's a great question. Yes, we are adhering as much as possible to Dash 264.
Okay, very good. David, obviously a lot's changed with the hardware side as well.
Yeah, I think the most significant change from last year is that we got into the hardware appliance business. Based on customer demand, we see that they're taking their software components, trying to build all these things themselves. It takes a lot of time and effort to do that. And people don't have time these days. Time is a premium. And what they want to do is to plug in cameras in the back or a video feed and push it out the front, multi-screen, have it all pre-set up, pre-configured, with or without DRM, push into the CDNs, making it all easy. So we've collapsed all of the software that we've been developing over the last 20 years. It is 20 years, believe me. We put it in 6 boxes, basically, from portable all the way to scalable blades. So now you can plug in your cameras or any type of video feed that could be DVB-S, DVB-T, television signals, demarks it and push it out the front. So it makes it really easy for people in video to create and distribute content. That said, we're still enhancing our software. We've had Dash, we've been shipping that since last September. We do both types of Dash, the H.264 for smartphones and tablets. We do Dash for TVs as well, the MPT transport stream versions. We're adding more and more DRM functionality this year for different vendors. We've added BiDRM and Varimatrix DRM, which we've been working with for quite some time. We're looking at Widevine and Marlin, for example. Those are areas. But we're just continuing to enhance all our technology, making it easier for people to use and use it in different flavors. If you want to build it yourself, you can build it yourself. If you don't want to build it yourself, you just want to buy a box, we've got boxes to suit everyone's budget. Just plug it in and go.
So just to clarify, and I'm trying to remember back when I wrote about the launch of the broadcast boxes at NAB, it not only is an encoder, it also has the Helix server built in as well.
So it's slightly different from normal encoders. Normal encoders are video signal in, and then you encode it, create what you want to do with it, and then push it to a streaming server or a CDN somewhere. Now we're doing all of that in the box. So in this sample, I can stream locally, and that's what we're doing here. And at the same time, if I hook up to the Wi-Fi, I can push it to an AWS instance or an Azure instance, whatever it happens to be, or even a Helix server, and then distribute the feed up on the web, and then push it out to the network. I can push it up to another Helix broadcaster in the internet and transcode that signal and make it then available and push it to different CDNs. So I've got this nice scalable architecture that you can implement now, so it's
Okay.
a lot more flexible.
Very good. Steve, besides the name change that we've had from last time, to Adobe Media Server
Yeah.
slash Flash, what's changed?
So yeah, obviously dropping Flash off the titles of everything is a major part, but we continue to expand in 3 areas really. Firstly, we continue to push up and down the food chain in terms of the servers. So more and more now you'll start to see the media server actually being deployed either at the encoding level or the cloud level, rather than as a separate infrastructure that people would maintain themselves. Secondly, we have altered our player strategy. So some of you may have heard that we now support, or are in the process of supporting HLS directly in the Flash player on desktops. We've also rewritten the Flash's video capability as a native set of components now for use on other devices. So again, going with that lack of Flash as being the only endpoint that we have. The third area where we're concentrating on now, and this comes kind of under the prime time branding that we brought out, is much more closely integrating our streaming and player technologies together with the other elements of business, i.e. advertising and analytics, so that we can get proper stats, proper coordinated stats out of that system and have that as part of a monetization strategy with much better integration with ad servers and those other technologies.
And if I remember correctly, and there was a bit of nuance that the company PR people made to me when I wrote an article, Dash playback capability is available through the Primetime player, which sits atop Flash player but not in Flash player proper itself.
That is correct. So on the desktop where you're using the essentially the Flash player, there is an extension to that which will take the Dash capability, which isn't part of the normal Flash player OSMF code that most people would use.
And then one other question, and I know yesterday was the big announcement for Creative Cloud, which of course those of us who went to Adobe Max found that we can no longer buy Creative Suite. We're going to do subscriptions to Creative Cloud.
Yep.
And that's obviously a company-wide decision to do rental of software as opposed to purchase. Is Adobe Media Server still available to purchase, or will it be in a subscription model like Creative Cloud?
No, so you're going to have a choice there. You either buy the software as you always have done, or you buy it through a partner's infrastructure, part of Azure or part of an encoder system or something like that, or we have a cloud offering as part of the prime time. So that still remains as any which way you want to utilize that.
All right, so it's one of the few products you can still actually buy as a product.
Absolutely, although you only ever perpetually license software. But yes.
No, sure. We'll get into the semantics of that later. But all right, Xavier, from the Azure standpoint.
Yeah, so a lot of news actually since October, because we launched Windows Azure Media Services in January. So for VOD workflow, we are running in 6 data centers now, 2 in US, 2 in Europe, and 2 in Asia. We launched with partners like Aspera to support UDP fast upload. We support EasyDRM, license delivery. And we are adding since January, every month we are adding features like, for example, dynamic packaging, which has been released a few months ago. So you can now output from one set of MP4 files. You can output HLS, Smooth, and Dash. We just added Dash last week as a preview. So we support Dash, common encryption, Play Ready from Azure. We have a lot of new announcements around projects. For example, we announced a deal with NBC, and they are going to use Azure for the coming months for live events. I think 5,000 hours of events. We also launched a project with European Tour. They are using Azure for VOD workflows. They have, I think, 500 hours of content available from Azure now from their website. And so we are now investing a lot on also some players. So we develop a player for HLS to bring vast advertising features to the iOS. So we have a source code for that. We did the same for Windows 8 because we launched Windows 8, and we develop smooth streaming and the Play Ready components for Windows 8 that works well with Azure. And that's the current status right now. So we are pretty proud of this last 6 months when we released so much new features. Yeah.
And I was very impressed when I went to visit with Microsoft in December, talking about the platform as a service model with Azure and media services. One of the things that I want to point out, something you said and just expand slightly, smooth streaming clients are decoupled from Silverlight. So there are a number of places like embedded players or the Windows 8 phone where a smooth streaming client now exists that can use the smooth streaming capabilities outside of Silverlight.
That's correct. Yeah, the strategy has changed for Microsoft. We want to position Azure as the best cloud platform for delivering the stream, which means that we support smooth streaming because we think it's a very good protocol. But we supporting HLS, we're supporting Dash, and we decouple completely smooth streaming and Play Ready from Silverlight. So you find smooth streaming in some TVs now. For example, Samsung announced that supports smooth streaming in the SDK, and you find also Play Ready. So yes, it's decoupled, and the goal is really to, stream the content to any devices, including of course Microsoft devices, but also third-party devices.
And then on your Dash preview, is it similar to what Wowza is doing, where you're focusing on kind of the FMP4 Dash 264, or are you also doing Dash HLS as well? It's
a fragmented MP4 CSF format. We choose that because it's really we support smooth streaming today. So we use smooth streaming as a mezzanine file format. You can use also MP4 files, and we think it's a good solution. So for now, we are focused on this FMP4 /CSF/common encryption format. which is also the guidelines from MPEG-IF. And we are following these guidelines, and we are participating also to the open source dash.js player. Yes, so we want to support this initiative.
Okay, very good. For those in the audience who may not know, MPEG-IF is the MPEG Industry Forum, and recently they came out with a set of parameters called DASH AVC/264. I'm not making that up. So it's dash AVC, which is effectively dash 264, but they were told they had to use the term AVC in it before they used the term 264. So if you go see something that says it's dash 264 compliant, you just need to confirm that it's dash AVC/264 compliant. I'll write it in the board, but it's really confusing.
But in fact, technically, it's reduced the complexity. It's increased
True,
the
yeah,
complexity
it
to
has,
explain,
right. It's pared
but
down
it's-
the dash,
yes, it's,
right,
it's
exactly.
a subset. You could say
Right.
it's a subset of
The
dash.
name is longer, but the complexity is less. That's true.
Exactly.
Okay, Arjen.
Over the last 6 to 8 months, I think what we've seen is that we've added quite a few different, more support for quite a few different formats, and then that's mainly audio and subtitles. For example, the Dolby Digital, Dolby Digital Plus, but also anything from DTS Express to DTS layered audio.
Mhm.
It's also pretty new and announced. And there's of course there's subtitles. I think that's what we've seen last year. Subtitles will be a feature that people will ask for, and that's what.
And in fact, some governments are requiring that there be subtitles. in
Yeah,
this point,
so
too.
that's definitely now what you see, that more support for different formats, for different ingesting of different subtitles. That's all being supported. That's still being worked on. And the last feature that we've been working on that's been requested is what we call, instead of transmuxing for all different container formats, it's called trans-DRM. Because sometimes customers have a use case where the content has to be encrypted on disk, it has to be stored on disk. And what we then can do is that you can actually, on the fly, you can actually decrypt the content and re-encrypt it with a different DRM system and then play that out. So you still have only one copy stored on disk instead of all the different DRM systems.
And are you tying that against the common encryption scheme DRMs? So specifically Marlin, PlayReady,
Yeah.
others? Okay.
And so, for example, just think about existing content that's already encrypted on disk,
Mhm.
but people now want to use it for Dash and
Okay.
common encryption, for example.
Okay, very good. So, and we'll start with you, Arwen, and work our way back. What are the things that you're and you sort of alluded to this, the things that you're working on, say, in the next 6 to 8 months that you see that are things the industry is really requesting, and maybe besides the encryption piece?
Besides, there's a lot of DRM questions, and a lot of you see a lot of DRM third-party providers now as well, so, and they all seem to have their own way of signaling their DRM schemes and how the DRM works, although it often ends up being very similar to common encryption. So that's just adding more support for that. Of course, there's Dash. I think that we are all pretty capable and ready for serving out Dash. So the delivery part is working quite well. I think that now pretty much the ball is on the player side.
Okay.
See players that
Sure.
can actually support all the different Dash variants that we play out.
And where do you think, as we're talking about the paring down to Dash AVC, do you think we'll see traction at any point around Dash MPEG-2 transport stream, or will it continue to just focus on this smaller core of?
I think it depends on what the players will end up be doing.
Mhm.
It may happen that there may be a player developed that works really well with MPEG transport streams
Mhm.
or set-top boxes or anything like that. And if if a player makes the decision to actually use MPEG transport streams, then obviously we have to support it
Sure,
as well.
but what you're saying now is Dash 264 players that are emerging in the market as opposed to,
Of course, the player starts with supporting the subset
right,
Dash
okay.
AVC 264.
All right, very good. Xavier, what are the things that, and obviously Azure as a platform can change, every 2 days or something like that and add features, but from a roadmap standpoint, where do you see you're going?
Yeah, In our roadmap, the next big feature will be live.
Live, sure.
So we plan to release a preview of live in the coming months. That's for us the biggest feature. And also we are working on onboarding partners in our platform. So we have an extensive SDK. So encoder partners, origin servers, DRM provider can publish their component in our platform. And so we are going also to, so we are working with partners right now, and in the coming months we are going to release that to the platform. That's our next also big features. And we have a lot of features, like we are working on dynamic DRM encryption. We are working on supporting more formats as an input, advanced format, and also on the output. So it's really driven by the market here. So we are going to update our encoder to support more format, have better performance, better quality, and so on. That's the trend we have for the product team. Yes.
All right, very good. Steve, you're the only one who hasn't mentioned Dash in the entire panel, so is Dash on the roadmap?
Dash is always on our roadmap. Actually, there is also live code out there as well.
Will it move off the roadmap? Exactly.
Yeah, I have to say, the question we get from customers is, how do I get on devices?
Okay.
And the protocol that they use, they don't care. It's how do I get on these devices now, ready for me to have a business on those. Hence why we've done the HLS inside of the Flash player and stuff like that. And I think we're pretty much agreed that we're going to be in a two protocol world for quite a long time anyway. So we've switched now and are focusing more on the usability of those streams. So things like simulcast or broadcast streams, being able to do more dynamic ad insertion or ad replacement technologies, or being able to vary fragmentation lengths and that kind of stuff. So to get better performance out of those fragments wherever they are. Of course, this is heavily dominant on the player and its ability to do things, hence why we've had that alternate strategy of moving our player technology out of the Flash player and into more native kind of languages.
Okay, very good. Now, one of the questions I have is, and it's kind of intriguing because in the last panel that Dom did, 2 of the CDNs said we have customers adding HLS to the mix, but in reality, 80 to 85% of our content is still RTMP.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was just fascinating to me because I guess we all sort of get into the hype mode of saying dash, 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 HEVC, although I'm not convinced on HEVC. But, so talk to me a little bit about that. 80 to 85%, is that a consistent number kind of across the board?
Yeah, it is. There is still, for all the advances that HTTP streaming in different formats have made, RTMP is still, by far and above the most used protocol. A lot of the reason for that is just the time and effort that went into building that infrastructure, getting the players, getting those workflows in place. So, we do see that changing, and we're actively engaged. We're trying to move people away because HTTP is a better delivering model. It's much more scalable and everything else. But until people come in their business life cycle to a point where they go, okay, now there is sufficient excuse for me to build a new player and that kind of stuff, they're still going to leverage what they can do on RTMP.
So let me ask you a question on that. Let's say, for instance, the player side goes to, something like Dash or HLS or what have you, any of the HTTP deliveries. Will we still see a consistency of from encoder to server being RTMP, or will that also change?
So in the Adobe world, that's also changing now.
Okay.
So we, again, will accept multiple protocols going in. You're most likely going to multicast your stream between the servers and then have an origin cache from which the CDNs will pull their fragments.
Okay.
So a much more simplified workflow, but one that gives the content owners control over that fragmentation process and time to live headers and all of that kind of stuff, but gives you the maximum scalability through the cacheability of those fragments.
Okay, interesting. David, what's coming down the pipeline for you all?
Well, the main focus right now from a Helix server perspective, we're just talking servers, because we do multiple things. It's really around DRM, adding more DRM functionality. That's one of the requirements we see a lot. We're doing some improvements to our HLS to bring it up to the latest HLS specifications. We we've got some of the things already in there. HLS version 5, there's bits and pieces we need to do in there. From a playback perspective, because that's another part of the Helix platform, on the Android platform we have an SDK. We've already had HLS version 4, so we can do multi-track, multi-video, multilingual capabilities in there. We're adding Web VTT, so that's coming soon, so that if anyone's building Android apps, they want HLS or Dash on those platforms, we have an app that does that, an SDK that enables you to do that. So it's kind of a key areas we're delivering in the next sort of 3 to 6 months.
And if I remember correctly, your SDK actually allows Android apps all the way back to 2.3.
Yeah, it goes back to 2.2.
2.2, okay.
Anything that's ARM version 7 architecture, back to Android 2.2, we can provide HLS and Dash retrospective support for those devices, right up to the most modern Android 4.2s. So with DRM from Verimatrix right now, and we're looking to extend the DRM capability on the Android side.
Interesting. Chris, Wowza?
Yeah, so we'll continue the Impact Dash implementation. I think the pieces remaining are closed captioning and common encryption.
Okay.
And so we'll wrap those up. We will also, we've been demoing for a while on-the-fly video on-demand transcoding. So you can take, if you have a large library and you want to take the most popular pieces and batch transcode those ahead of time, but you want to keep the other 10,000 assets and only transcode those the moment somebody asks for them and in the format that they ask for it, you can do that. So you don't have to necessarily batch transcode, thousands and thousands of files that might not get used. So we'll have that available soon. And the last part, new graphical user interface.
Ah.
A lot of folks have been asking for that for a while, and so we're...
So don't have to use the command line anymore.
Right, XML configuration.
Okay.
It's very exciting.
Very interesting. All right, so 2 more quick questions, and I'm going to actually combine these 2 together since we've got a limited amount of time, and I want to have audience Q&A. So it's a 2-part question. What one customer request have you been hammered on that you haven't yet done? Because obviously customers tend to be relatively vocal when they need a particular thing. And secondly, along those lines, what piece do you feel that needs to be implemented that hasn't been implemented within the server technology? And Chris, I'll start with you. Or actually, you know what? I'll just throw it open to the group as a whole. So somebody step up on that.
Well, I can step up.
Okay.
Since I'm here. I guess there are a number of things that we hear. One that we hear pretty often is requests for x264 support.
Okay.
Just for higher efficiency. And so that's one that we're thinking about. Another one that we hear a lot and that I'm not sure what we'll do on it, but is cloud services. People keep asking us to be a cloud services provider as opposed to a cloud services infrastructure provider. And I don't know that we'll necessarily be going into the cloud services business, but we'll do what we can to make things easier for folks who want to build that.
And people can already do Wowza instances on AWS, is that correct?
They can. AWS, people are running out of Rackspace and
Okay.
on Azure as well.
On Azure as well, okay. Interesting. David?
I think the main one that we see quite frequently is the way to do HLS packaging. Basically, if you have an ingested stream, you want to be able to redeploy that multiple times in multiple playlists in multiple ways for multiple customers. So that's one area. It's technically not that difficult to do, but it's just a way of managing the playlists in a way that works for live and works for VOD. I mean, VOD is quite easy to do, but it's live people. If you imagine a content owner, they've got thousands of feeds coming in, and they want to say, well, this customer over here was stream 1, 2, and 4. Yeah, but this customer here wants 2, 4, and 6. Yeah, and they want to be an easy way of packaging that rather than sitting there with VI or some editing software producing the script. So that's one of the things that we've got on a to-do list and get asked for it quite a lot, and we need to get it done.
Okay.
So
Good. Steve?
Yeah, so the thing we get asked most from our customers at the moment is solve the Android problem.
Okay.
Android with DRM is a nightmare, as I'm sure you guys know.
Android with core technologies is a nightmare as well.
Yeah,
even
so
minus DRM.
So that's obviously been a lot of the focus on taking that Flash Player capability out of the Flash Player. We have technology to do that now, but it's taken it's taken a while for a solution to start appearing on that platform, because it is becoming a much more prevalent one than it used to be. And the other thing is recombining fragments. So again, coming back to this idea of reusing those fragments once you've distributed them. We've already gone some way into doing that. We've had what we call the imaginatively called live to VOD tool, which basically allows you to recombine fragments in a new order. But that kind of capability has so many reuses. So that's a big focus again going forward.
And this is different from late binding. It's literally is a restructuring of the
right.
packet.
So this is a live event where you want the highlights. So instead of having to recut, re-edit, you basically go, no, I know those fragments are out there, they're already distributed, you re-stitch them in the right order that you want, publish a new manifest file, and reuse those segments. With the player's ability not to have to play an entire segment, start playback from anywhere within a segment, you can get that pinpoint accuracy and even timecode accuracy now with the playback to doing that. So it becomes a very feasible thing to do.
Interesting. So a quick question on Android, because I know last year when the decision was made to end Flash Player for mobile, in reality what Adobe was doing was saying to developers, just use Flex. Flex will have the Flash Player capability built into it. We're not going to try to maintain separate Flash Player for mobile for several hundred Android devices at that point. With the model of self-contained apps that have video playback capability through Flash Player, how does that match up with the primetime piece? Is the assumption that there will be an app that will specifically have the Flex capability, i.e. the Flash Player capability built into it, and then the primetime service on top of it? Or will companies be able to get away with not necessarily having to build their own custom app for Android to still get the primetime services?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you for bringing that up again. The debacle of last year's announcements. But anyway, so...
I only do that because there's still confusion in the market.
There is still confusion. So basically there's two routes open. There is the application route, and there's the I just want a video player route. Mm-hmm. The application route is still through Air with a bundle Flash Player, and you build your whole application, deploy that as an application. And that's fine for a lot of things, but a whole application on something like Air is a fairly substantive piece of code work. So the other alternative then is to go for just the player technology. And yes, these devices are coming out with hardware built-in players and everything else, but DRM becomes an issue then, because you've got to have root of trust all the way through that decrypt cycle. Hence why software-based players become an alternative with a secure, trusted root and everything else. Hence, on Android we have a Java version of the Flash Player stack that just handles the video rendering components. So none of the other UI stuff and everything else that Flash gives you or Air gives you, it's just video rendering, captioning, bitrate management, just the video stack as a Java set. So choice of how you want to do that.
All right. So those developers who are building in Air using Flex and the Flash Professional aren't necessarily going to be able to overcome within that app the issues of root trust. That's why they would need to look at something like...
So, I mean, within that they have the Flash Player, which will software decrypt and provide that root of trust. So that is a way of doing it.
Okay.
It's a heavier weight application, obviously, if you're using something like Air, because you're building a full-scale application. If you just need the video player, then we've solved it by going just the video component route.
And is the Java player that you're mentioning just on Android, or is it on Symbian and other platforms that can use Java as well?
So first port has been specifically for Android.
For Android.
And there will be other ports of that too.
And what version of Android? 4 and above? 3 and above?
No, it's 2.3 and above.
2.3 and above.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Very good. Xavier?
We still have a request on for multicast stream. We have large enterprise and network operator that wants to switch to OTT technology like Adobe Streaming, Dash, Smooth, but they are still stressed by the fact that even if they deploy CDN, they are stressed by the fact that they cannot scale in the same way they have been able to scale with IPTV or with multicast inside the network for enterprise. So it's still a request we got from this market, and we need to be creative to find a way to couple the OTT, unicast technology, HTTP technology, cloud services, and managed network. So that's something also we are looking to, but it's not, there is no an easy answer to this issue
Okay.
and request from customers.
All right, very good. And Arjen?
Yeah, something pretty, totally different. We actually get quite a few requests for audio only, so radio.
Okay.
And then, one of the nice features that people now start to recognize is that you can do different streams, obviously different bit rates, different qualities, make sure that they play everywhere, but also add a layer of encryption to it or add DRM to it, which solves quite a few, switching to, for example, HLS with encryption solves quite a few scalability issues and,
That's an interesting point. So if you think about the old, just thinking back to old podcasts, remember MP3 podcast, you could put up a single still image to carry through the entire thing. AAC, you could of course do timings. And then you think way back to the real slideshow era where it was audio with a couple slides. When they're asking for audio only, is it truly just audio only, or do they want to also carry through some sort of
some
album
pictures,
art?
Today, the album art,
Okay.
Artist title, these things, and present them in a way.
Interesting. That's intriguing that we're moving back to that era.
Yeah.
And I guess that's because of the advent of mobile devices. People tend to want to listen to whatever it is they're going to listen to wherever they are.
And then, for example, HLS makes perfect sense, or
Right.
mobile devices.
Okay, interesting, very good. All right, we've got just a few more minutes. Let me open it for questions from the audience. And Dom, you're going to ask about multicast, or you're going to ask about something else? All right.
Particularly picking up on Steve's point about dealing with Android. There's one company that can probably deal with Android better than everyone else, and that's Google. Three of the companies here used to have a server and a player. Some of them still do. Google's obviously got quite a lot of client-side footprint in broad technical terms. They can probably sort out the Android problem, but I'm pretty sure they're going to serve it to themselves and bring their own services. So I don't think they're going to be buying any of your technologies. So just a contentious question: Do you think that's viable? Do you think people are going to are building up to something fairly heavyweight, or do you think they're going to come to you guys to buy your technology?
So I'll take the first stab at that. There are standard formats and protocols which is going to be hard for them to avoid, even though they do have their own codecs and everything else. It will change too much of the workflow. So whilst they might constrain in the way that maybe Apple does with the App Store and approvals and that kind of stuff, I don't see them as having that much control over the workflow of the entire delivery and end-to-end piece. So I think that will stop them from going all the way to controlling that entire output area.
Let me ask and I want other people in the audience, on the panel to answer that, but let me ask a question. I mean, one of the theories has been Android's so fragmented, Google will eventually just rein it back in and say, here's the new version, everybody has to use this one going forward. Do we think that will happen, or do we think that Pandora's box has been open so long that there's no way to put everything back into it?
I think it's been open too long, personally.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so too. It's too fragmented, and you've got too many devices in the market, so it's very difficult. I mean, the Google Chrome browser, can do a lot to help playback, especially for HTML5. They do proper embedding tags.
Mm-hmm.
If they do HLS properly, which they don't right now, if they do DASH properly, then we stand a chance of having, for developers, we stand a chance of having a good way of doing playback. But the question then comes is, what DRM? And as you know, they own Widevine, so is it only going to be Widevine DRM and nobody else? So, you kind of have to, dance with the devil, as they say.
Anybody else on Dom's question before we move to the next one? Okay, all right.
One of the biggest whines from my CTO and our development team is that we've almost gone backwards as more of these codecs and devices and things come out. The world's supposed to be moving to more of an interactive environment with all this tech. One of the things that we've all been, most of us have been doing for 15 years is doing slide flipping. You send out a stream, it's got an embedded frame actor trigger, and you can then flip a slide. I would love anybody in the audience on the panel to show me how to do this, or show our team how to do this using HLS. Apple's a very, very closed way of doing it. We've even looked at injecting SCTI markers, but then you've got to have a mechanism that does that. You've got to solve another problem before you can get to. So I'm just wondering, are we actually regressing in a lot of ways? Are there solutions for this and we just don't know about them? Do you guys have a solution for this? We can't be the only people, who could have this.
So from our point, we haven't moved as fast forward as we thought, given what you can do with interactivity on video. And most of that is due to the driver commercially has been most of the big broadcasters and publishers. And that has driven probably an unfair share of how the workflow has evolved. Metadata is tremendously important in being able to do any kind of interactivity. At the moment, with a lot of protocols, the only metadata you get is the time code. And that is almost what you're limited on in doing things. That will hopefully change. Dash has got a much better metadata handling, HDS has a better metadata handling. So, hopefully with one of these new standards, if it comes up, and if Apple gets on board, you'll have some proper metadata that you can actually do some interesting interactivity of. But that's still an open question, whether we've actually advanced in our ability to do things with video.
And as we're adding the time text and closed captioning and things like that, are we finding that there are new new substandards within those standards to say here's a way to trigger things other than the time code?
Yes, but then again, it's nice that there are now like subtitles, and you can easily abuse like the subtitle tracks for adding all the metadata, and that's what people are already doing. But unfortunately as well, it's like there's not one format specified, not even for ingestion, but also not for output. And when Apple shows WebFeed, and that's different again from DFXP, and there's all the different formats, and all the players seem to have a problem supporting different formats. So coming up with one, if you want to add queues or anything like that, even something simple as queues are different among all formats and all players, and that's So you have to still do work on your own, supporting one or two players that you pick.
Reminds me of the old days when I did actual slideshows where we had click tracks on one of the tracks to tell it when it was time to change. Interesting.
Well, it's one of those reasons why RTMP is still used, because the cue point markers is, it's still there. It's still so useful for a lot of use cases, and it still drives people to use that particular protocol and stuff. So.
All right, one last question as we wrap up. We really haven't talked about H.265, HEVC. There's thoughts on that from supporting it from a server standpoint? And is there demand, is there valid demand for it at this point?
So we have some demands from some our customers to have H.265 and 4K resolution for some proof of concept. So we are working with third-party encoders, vendor that can port the encoder to our cloud. So our partners are HEVC in their roadmap, so we hope to have HEVC encoding in the cloud, and potentially the cloud is a good platform for this kind of encoding because you need a lot of resources. And of course, when HEVC devices will arrive on the market probably next year with some chipset, you will have to re-encode your content, so it could make sense to use the cloud for that. Of course, this is I think it's a long-term evolutions. I think it's like migrating from to H.265, H.264. It took years. It's probably going to take years for that. But customer will have to manage both devices, and they will probably want to use H.265 for some devices to reduce the bandwidth and to reduce the cost of delivering the content. So I think this year is going to be more the year of proof of concept, some testing, and next year we will see the first service coming and delivering this kind of content.
And the chipsets are primarily television chipsets, mobile chipsets that you're saying that would be out next year?
We see TV chipsets.
TV chipsets, okay.
And probably some mobile devices too, because there is a lot of competition on mobile world, and I imagine some manufacturer will put H.265 as an important feature for the next for the new phone. So I think both TV and mobile phone are going to push H.265. Yes.
So, and just to make sure I understand, just like say the move from standard definition to high definition kind of brought H.264 into the mix because we could do better compressions. Are you saying that you're seeing HEVC H265 for 4K primarily as opposed to a replacement for 264 on the 720p, 1080p?
It could be for 4K or it could be for 1080p, because actually if you look at the deployment of H264 on the internet, it's mostly 720p.
720, exactly.
Right? So that could be a way to do 1080p with over-the-top technologies. But it's true, it's good to couple a new codec technology with a new value for the consumer. And for the consumer doesn't care about the codec, right? It cares about the image quality, the features. So it's possible that a 4K will push a lot of HEVC, and there will be this kind of bundle from the device manufacturers. Yes.
Okay. Anybody else on HEVC? All right. Given that, I'd like everyone to give the panel a round of applause.